"Don't lift my skirt," she whispered, her voice trembling like a fragile breeze caught in a storm. Imagine hearing those words from a girl whose eyes hold secrets darker than any nightmare. Secrets so painful, they could shatter your soul. This wasn't just a desperate plea. It was a silent scream begging to be understood, to be saved. When the preacher looked closer, what he saw wasn't just scars or bruises. It was a broken spirit, a haunting truth wrapped in silence. And in that moment, everything he believed was ripped apart: his faith, his trust, his very reason for preaching. What she begged to hide revealed a secret so horrifying. It made a man of God question everything he thought he knew about mercy and justice. This is a story about darkness hiding behind holy words, about innocence stolen in shadows, and a fight to reclaim light when hope feels lost. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will grip your heart, tear down your faith, and challenge everything you believe about good and evil. The preacher had seen many things in his 30 years of ministry: death, betrayal, forgiveness, even miracles. But nothing, not war, not famine, not the cries of broken mothers, had ever shaken his faith. Until that one cold morning, when a trembling girl stood at the edge of his wooden chapel, whispering a plea he would never forget. It had snowed the night before, but the dawn sun lit the frost like shattered glass across the fields. The preacher, Reverend Elijah, had just finished lighting the altar candles when he saw her, barefoot, muddy, and clutching a torn blanket around her shoulders. She didn't belong to the town. He would have remembered eyes like that, wide, haunted, the kind that looked as if they'd seen 1,000 winters in just 15 years of life. She didn't speak at first, just stood there, fingers frozen blue, lips cracked. He approached gently, not wanting to scare her. "Child," he said softly, "do you need shelter?" She nodded once, almost imperceptibly, but when he reached for her hand, she flinched like a wild animal. That was the first sign. He brought her inside the chapel, lit the hearth, and gave her warm broth. She sat in silence, knees pulled to her chest, eyes darting like a trapped bird's. Every creak in the wooden walls made her shiver. After a long silence, he knelt beside her. "What's your name, child?" Her voice was brittle as ash. "Lena. Where are your parents?" She didn't answer. He waited, and then she whispered, "Dead." She wouldn't say more. Over the next hour, Elijah tried to piece together something, anything about her past. She gave nothing away. Not where she came from, not how long she'd been walking, not even her last name. But her eyes, they told a story. One full of pain, secrets, and something darker than he'd ever seen. At noon, he called the town doctor to examine her. She refused. "I'm fine," she said quickly. "You're not," the preacher replied gently. "You can barely walk. I just need to rest." He looked at her torn clothes, the bruises hidden beneath the dirt on her arms. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. Then she said it. "Please," her voice shook. "Don't lift my skirt." He froze. "I wasn't going to," he began, confused, but she curled into herself, hugging her knees, eyes wild with panic. "Please," she whispered again. Don't look. Just let me be." A chill passed through him, not from the cold, but from something far heavier. The way she said it, like someone who'd begged before, like someone who'd been ignored. He sat back, heart pounding with a strange fear. Not fear for her, but fear of what might already have been done to her. That night, she slept in the chapel's spare room. But Elijah couldn't sleep. Her words echoed in his mind. "Don't lift my skirt." The next morning, he went to check on her. She was burning with fever, barely conscious. She was murmuring in her sleep, twitching, crying out. He called the doctor again. This time, he insisted. The old doctor arrived, grumbling. "What's this now, Elijah? Another broken girl?" Elijah didn't smile. "Please, just look, but be gentle." The doctor tried to examine her arms and chest, but when he reached toward her legs, even in her sleep, she flinched violently. Elijah turned away, jaw clenched. A few minutes later, the doctor called him in. He was pale. "Elijah, you need to see this." The preacher stepped inside, his heart already tightening. The blanket had slipped halfway, revealing her leg. It was covered in scars, not fresh cuts, but old, healed ones, layered one atop the other, like someone had carved into her again and again. She's been branded, the doctor said grimly. More than once. Branded. Elijah staggered back. She's not just running, the doctor added. She was owned. The words hit Elijah like a hammer to the chest. Owned, the doctor nodded. Probably sold. Maybe for labor. Maybe for worse. Suddenly, her whisper made sense. Don't lift my skirt. What else was hidden there? The preacher sat beside her bed for hours after the doctor left. He didn't speak. He didn't pray. For the first time in his life, he didn't know how. She woke near dusk. Her eyes opened slowly, glassy and exhausted. You saw, she said quietly. He nodded, throat dry. I told you not to. I didn't want to, he whispered, but I needed to know. To help you. Lena turned her face away. You can't help. No one can. Who did this to you? Silence. Elena, he said, using her full name for the first time. Please. And then she broke. Not loudly, not with screams or sobs, but with quiet, breathless gasps as tears ran silently down her cheeks. He wore a cross, she whispered. Elijah's blood ran cold. What? The man who bought me. He wore a cross around his neck. Said he was holy. Said God gave me to him. Elijah felt his soul rip in two. How long? 3 years. He stood slowly, fists clenched. Where is he now? She shook her head. I ran. He'll find me. They always do. There were others. Girls. Elijah stepped outside into the snow and stared at the empty horizon. The chapel steeple rose above him like a question mark against the sky. He had preached about good and evil for decades. About justice, faith, redemption. But nothing prepared him for this. A man, wearing God's name, had scarred this child, had branded her like cattle. That night, as the wind howled across the frozen fields, Reverend Elijah Cole sat in the dark chapel, staring at the cross above the altar. He didn't weep. He didn't pray. He just whispered 4 words, barely audible in the silence. Where were you, God? The words echoed in the chapel long after the preacher spoke them. For the first time in his life, Reverend Elijah Cole wasn't praying. He was accusing, questioning, crumbling. He had given his entire life to the pulpit, to mercy, to sermons on forgiveness and grace. But now, all he saw was a bloodstained trail that led to the fragile girl sleeping in the next room, and the monster who called himself holy. The next morning, Lena sat at the table, eyes still swollen from the night before. She didn't speak much. She stirred her porridge slowly, lost in her own world. Elijah sat across from her, his Bible untouched. Instead, he held a mug of black coffee, staring into it like it held the answers he couldn't find in Scripture anymore. Finally, he spoke. I want to take you to the sheriff. No, you'll be safe there. No one can keep me safe. He sighed. Then tell me who he is. Give me a name. She hesitated, then whispered, Harlan Pike. Elijah froze. The name felt like a punch to the chest. Harlan Pike wasn't a stranger. He was a traveling revival preacher, a man who'd preached in Elijah's own church just 2 years ago. Charismatic, smiling, quoting Scripture with perfect memory. The congregation had praised him, said he spoke like fire and thunder. He was a man Elijah had shaken hands with, had welcomed into his home, had prayed beside, and now he knew. He had been praying beside the devil himself. Lena looked up. You know him. I did, Elijah whispered. Not anymore. Her lips trembled, but she nodded. That night, Elijah didn't sleep. He sat by the fireplace, staring at the flames, trying to make sense of it all. How could a man wear the cloth and carry such evil? How many others were like Lena? And how many were still trapped? By morning, he made a decision. He wouldn't go to the sheriff. Not yet. He would go to Harlan Pike himself. It was risky, dangerous, reckless even. But Elijah had to look that man in the eyes and see if the devil truly wore a cross. He packed his horse, left food and firewood for Lena, and told her he'd return in 2 days. You're going to him, she said, her voice flat. I have to. He'll lie to you. I know. He'll smile. I'll see through it. She stared at him, tears brimming. He fooled everyone. Not anymore. And then, she did something that froze Elijah's soul. She reached under her blanket and pulled out a small, rusted iron cross, the kind worn on a chain. I took it when I ran, she whispered, so I'd never forget what he did. Elijah stared at it, unable to speak. She pressed it into his hand. If he lies, show him this. He rode out before sunrise. The trail was icy, the wind biting, but Elijah's resolve burned hotter than ever before. By dusk, he reached a small cabin tucked behind a ridge outside a dying town. A lantern flickered in the window. He dismounted and approached the door, heart pounding. It opened before he knocked. Harlan Pike stood there, smiling wide. Brother Elijah. What a surprise. Come in, come in. Elijah stepped inside slowly. The warmth of the cabin felt false, heavy. Too perfect. Didn't expect to see you out this way, Harlan said, pouring coffee. Still preaching in the valley? Still trying, Elijah replied, voice low. They sat at a rough wooden table. Harlan was all charm and ease, but Elijah studied his every move. Finally, Elijah spoke. I found a girl. 15. Scarred. Terrified. Harlan's smile flickered just slightly. Elijah continued. She says she was owned, branded, by a man who wore a cross. Silence. Harlan's hand stilled. She gave me a name, Elijah said, locking eyes with him. Harlan Pike. Harlan leaned back slowly, face unreadable. You believe her? She's broken. That doesn't mean she's telling the truth. She showed me the scars, the brands. Harlan scoffed. You know how these girls are. Runaways. Liars. They crave attention. She didn't ask for anything. Not food. Not shelter. Not mercy. Just one thing. Harlan raised an eyebrow. Elijah pulled the rusted iron cross from his coat and placed it on the table. She begged me not to lift her skirt. The cross hit the wood with a dull thud. Harlan's face paled. I didn't understand at first, Elijah said. But then I saw what you left behind. Harlan stood abruptly. I won't be accused by you. You don't know what she is. I know what you are, Elijah said, rising too. And God help me. I used to pray beside you. She came to me willingly. Harlan shouted. She was a gift, a sacrifice to cleanse her sins. Elijah stared at him, horror-struck. You still believe you're holy, he whispered. I am. Harlan bellowed. I saved her. I gave her purpose. You branded her. She needed to be purified. Something inside Elijah snapped. He lunged, grabbed Harlan by the collar, and slammed him against the wall. The preacher's hand shook with rage, grief, and something far worse, betrayal. You've destroyed lives, Elijah said through clenched teeth. In God's name. Harlan smiled, eyes wild, and he watched every moment. Elijah stepped back, disgusted. He turned and walked out into the night, leaving the door wide open behind him. Harlan didn't follow. By the time Elijah returned to the chapel, Lena was awake, pacing, her face pale. You saw him, she said. He nodded. You believe me now. I believed you before. Now I've seen the monster. Her eyes welled up. What will happen to him? Elijah looked at her, weary and broken. He'll answer. If not to the law, then to God. She shook her head. God watched, and he did nothing. Elijah knelt in front of her, tears forming. I don't have answers. Not anymore. But I swear to you, Lena, you are not forgotten, and you are not alone. She reached out and gripped his hand hard. That night, Elijah didn't preach. He sat in silence beside the altar, not as a man of faith, but as a man who had seen what lies beneath the surface of holy robes. And he knew this. Sometimes evil wears a smile. Sometimes it wears a cross. And sometimes it walks into a chapel and begs not to be touched. Elijah sat alone in the dim chapel, the weight of everything pressing down like the cold stone beneath him. The flicker of candlelight barely chased away the shadows that clung to the corners. Outside, the wind howled, a a mournful sound that seemed to echo his own shattered faith. He thought of Lena, her quiet strength, the pain etched into her very bones, the whispered plea, "Don't lift my skirt." A plea born not just of fear, but of unbearable shame. Elijah's hands trembled as he clasped the iron cross she had given him, the one she carried like a shield against darkness. How many others carried such crosses? How many silent cries were buried beneath prayers and hymns? He looked up at the stained glass window. The colors were beautiful, reds, blues, gold, but the image felt hollow now. A figure of light, turned away from the suffering below. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Where were you?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. But then, a small thought flickered inside him, fragile as a newborn flame. Maybe faith wasn't about blind trust. Maybe it was about standing up, even when the world was broken, even when God seemed silent. Elijah rose, feeling the weight shift, not gone, but changed. He went to Lena's room and found her sitting by the window, looking out at the dark woods. "Lena," he said softly. She turned, eyes weary but steady. "We will fight," he promised. "Not just for you, for all who cannot speak." Tears welled up, but she nodded. For the first time, "I don't feel invisible," she said. Together, they planned the path ahead. Elijah would rally the town, expose the lies, and bring justice to the darkness lurking in holy robes. It would be dangerous. It would be painful, but it was necessary. As dawn crept through the chapel windows, Elijah felt something new stir inside him. Not faith as before, but courage. A courage born from brokenness, from truth, from a whispered plea that refused to be silenced. And as the sun rose, casting light across the cracked floor, Elijah knew one thing. No darkness, no matter how deep, could ever erase the power of one voice daring to speak, and one heart daring to fight. Because sometimes, salvation doesn't come from miracles or answers. It comes from standing up when all else falls, from hearing the quiet cries, from never looking away, even when faith falters. Especially then. The preacher's journey was far from over. But now, with Lena beside him, he was no longer lost. He was found. If this story touched your heart, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories that move your soul. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss a moment of hope, courage, and truth. Thank you for being part of our journey. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for watching and sharing in this story. Your support means everything, and together we keep hope alive. Stay strong, stay kind, and until next time, take care.